This is the image that we are going to be creating today, or that I'm going to show you how I created today. In the comments in the previous video, someone had asked if I would create a short series in editing or compositing and supply the images. This one I'm not supplying the images with, but I have been looking out to do maybe 3 or 4 to show you how to do it. So they will be coming in the very near future for that. So thanks for that comment. That was a great idea. These images here, some of them are freely downloadable on the internet, and I use PNGs quite a lot in my composites just to save time. So if you're ever doing a search for anything like these wings, for example, search wings.png and it'll take you to one of the sites where you can freely download them. A lot of these images here come from Adobe Stock because I have an Adobe Stock account because of the compositing I do. Another thing that I want to show you with this video is the power of a grey layer within Luminar Neo. So it might be quite a long video, this one, but it will show you what you can do with a grey layer, how Luminar Neo works just now. So hopefully you'll find that advantageous when you're doing your edits or doing your composites. So let's dive right in and edit this image. So I'm going to create what's more down the lines of graphic design than anything else. Very basic, but along the lines of graphic design. And as per usual, everything's loaded in here. So we are going to start with the girl. And I'm going to change the aspect ratio to around about there. And as you notice, it's coming in as a 16:9. I quite favour my 16:9 images, so I'm going to leave it at that for this. And I'm going to take the opacity up full. And then I am going to get into crop, and I'm going to go for a free crop and take it up to the image itself and see what it looks like from there. Yep, I'm quite happy. She looks as if she's just in the middle there, so let's crop that. So as you see, we have the girl here on a grey background. And I'll show that back again. But I want the girl on a white background. So let me show you what we do here. We go in, the first thing I'm going to do is I just want the girl for this. So I'm going into AI mask. And that will allow it to select the human in this case. If I select human, we've now got her. And if I go back to adjustments, she is there. So you can see that there, but you can see there is slight edges here. The masking is really good, but even with Lightroom masking as well, there's tiny anomalies in this. Here we have hair and everything that we can see, and against the grey it really shows up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back down to the grey layer, and I'm going to go and turn the exposure up. Now I could have started this in a white background, but if I start it in a white background, I don't have the same versatility that I need later on, and you'll see why in this edit. So I'm going to add another layer, and as I say, everything's loaded in here, so I'm going to add these wings. And they look about right, spacing wise, and it's roughly in the middle. That's quite lucky with that one. So again, I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to drag this behind the girl. Straight away, you can see what's happening here. I'm also going to start to edit the girl just now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get back onto that layer. I'm going to get into the masking, and I could use a linear gradient, but I like more control of the brush. So I am going to just do this just now, and it's on erase as you see. So I'm just going to do that one sweep, just to see how the feathers are beginning to show now. So I'm going to go up here, do another sweep. I'm not going into the shoulders, and that way we are bringing more attention to this area here. So that I'm quite happy with. I could turn the opacity down of this and soften it in there, which I may do later. But for now, we're going to go with that. The next thing we are going to add is this one here, which is just some graffiti. Now I've got a choice of both here, but I'm going to use this one. I quite like this one, and it fits in with the rest of the design. And where this is going to sit is around about here on an angle. And I'm going to set it just there at the wings. And for me right now, it's still too big. So I'm going to take it down to about that size. Roughly about there. That's okay at that. And I'm going to turn the opacity right up. And I'm going to go in and mask it. And I'm going to use the erase again, but I'm going to turn the size of the eraser down so that it doesn't bleed onto the bits that I want to keep. So we do that. Remember, if you're doing this, to take out any lines because they could show up. So we're going to do that, and we're left. See, there's a tiny part of it there. I'll take the brush size right down. This video may be longer, but hopefully it'll let you see just different techniques to bring an image together. So we want that there, but we want it behind the girl, which is there. And we also want a layer blend with this. Now we may want it to layer blend with the wings, or we may want it behind the wings and then layer blend there. This is where we decide. Adjustments. So let's go in, and if I darken, straight away, that's the one I want. And by darkening, it's removed all the lighter areas within this. So that's the one I want straight away. Now I'm going to add another one on the opposite side, and how I do this is I go into here, because you can't copy layers yet. Hopefully one day you'll be able to do it, but at the moment you can't. So I'm going to take it down in size, and because it's coming in at 50% opacity, I can play around with this. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go up and lie it over this one. It won't be exact, but I don't mind. I really don't mind for this. So we do that. Let's get the angle roughly the same. That's about the same there. About the same there. Let's stretch it slightly. Take the angle down. So you get the idea with this. I'll just leave it at that. It's slightly smaller, as you can see, so I'd have to stretch that a couple of ways to get it to match up. I drag it down that way, but as long as you get the idea for this, just to about there. Right, and so I'm going to move this down. I'm going to turn the opacity right up, use the masking, the brush, and get rid of everything that I don't want here. So there we have it there. So the next thing is go in, flip it horizontally, and then we'll take it up to the roughly the same angle and roughly the same positioning. So if I do that, that looks about right there. Just roughly about there. I'll go into my darken, and then we'll have a look at it. It looks slightly narrow, you can see the difference. So I'm going to take it up to there, and I'm watching where everything falls into place for this. Now, I could have created a layer with guides and just overlaid it and worked with that all the time, but for the purpose of this, it's fine to do this with it. So we have that. A couple of bits are still to get rid of, or do I? If I drop it back down behind here, they disappear. Tiny wee part in there to go, so we'll get that just now. Masking, erase, take the brush size right down so that it doesn't affect anything else, and just paint that out. So there's a couple of bits in this just now that I want to get rid of, and I'm going to go in here, and it's just a couple of areas in here. So I'm going to go back into the masking, get into the brush, make sure I'm in erase. I'm going to zoom in, and it's just Control and plus on a PC, or Command and plus on a Mac, I assume. And I'm going to make the brush a tiny bit bigger, and I'm just going to get rid of these areas here. And I can go in there, and I can overlap here slightly, because it's not going to affect the image at all. So I can go in there slightly, in there slightly. We're looking for a fade, and that's okay with that. That's actually okay with that. So I'll zoom back out, or I can go back to fit to screen. So this is what we have at the moment. A few more layers to add, but at least you can see how this is coming together. I'll jump into the grey layer after the next edit, so I'm going to add one more thing to this just now, or two more things to this. So we'll go back in here, and as you can see, we've got everything in here. So one of them I'm going to add is the love hearts. And again, I'm going to scale it down, just to around about there, and take it down to about there. Move it up, and this is going to sit roughly there, but a bit bigger. And that looks okay. So this is when we decide opacity, masking, brush, erase, quite big with this. We get rid of that area there. And as per usual, we take the brush size down, we get rid of any of the lines around the edge. The more random you make these, the less it will stand out in your edit, if it's going to stand out at all. So there we have that. So we now need a blending mode here. Now we could go in for darken, and that doesn't really work. The one that I know will work with this is multiply. And multiply will allow us to see that, and as you see, it bleeds onto our hair slightly, so we'll go in and edit that as well. But with the multiply, I'm also going in and turn the exposure down slightly, and I'm going to push the smart contrast here. Yep, and that works great. So I'm going to zoom in again. Let's go for 100%. Move this down, and I'm going to remove any of these that bleed onto the hair. The rest of them are okay, but any that bleed onto the hair I don't want at all. Erase small brush size. So I actually may zoom in even further. Go into 200% and just take these out. Just round there. I'm just looking to see if there's any still. There's a tiny one there. And what you can also do here, if they're bleeding on, because you can see that that's got quite a hard edge on that. And although it's just for fun that we're doing this, you want to make it look as good as you can. So I'm going to take the strength down, and I'm going to just increase the brush size slightly, and I'm going to move closer to that last edit. Now this may be too much, but we'll be able to tell once we see it. That's a better fade, but down here it's not as good. So if I go back into the paint and I take the strength back up slightly, down even further, and just do that, it will help us blend back in. For the purposes of this looks okay. So I'm going to get back into erase. Strength to 100, size really small, 300% zoom for this. And I'm going to make her eye reappear. That looks okay, we'll get away with that. Yep, we will. Let's go back to fit to screen. So now you see how far we've gotten already with this. If there's any anomalies, we can get back in and change them later. One more layer to add, and then I'll talk about the greys again and how we can use them. So my final layer for this is this one, I think it is. Yes. Now I'm going to scale this down. This is a half-tone pattern, and it's probably not used as much by graphic designers, but it used to be used a lot when it was printing. So I'm going to put that over her face, and just about halfway over her face. And then I'm going to make the opacity 100%. I am going to go in for a, let's go for a darken. Yes, that's exactly what I want, but as you can see, the halftone pattern isn't really round. So let's make it a bit rounder, just because we've squashed it up. We'll go for that for the purposes of this, and there'll be a couple I'll have to take out, as you'll see, and you'll see why in a minute. And let's just make the size of them that way a bit bigger, and that way. So we are just having fun with this, but it's going to be worth it in the end. Again, masking, brush. This time we're going to paint in. And again, I'm going to zoom in. I only want the halftone pattern here on her face. I don't want it in the hair. So if I paint in, I'm controlling where it actually goes. So if I just start painting here, you can see it's zoomed out there. And I'll go back into erase, and just take out that area, and then I'll zoom back in. So back into paint, and you'll see them appearing here. Any that bleed over, we will get rid of. Like down there in our eyes, we will remove any that we don't want. And so there we go. Right, they look as if they're in there quite well. So let's take some out of our eyes, off our teeth. Might leave them on the lips though. Erase. So I'm going to take, again, I'm going to take the brush size down. So I'm going to take that one out. I'm also going to look and see if there's any in our nostrils, just in case there's one there. I'm going to take these ones out the eyes, just to about there, and that one there as well. The ones bleeding onto our fingers are gone. Any on our hair, we'll get rid of them. So you can see how quickly and easily these build up, these types of images. And let's just take that out of there, just so that the halftone is really on the skin, just for the purposes of this video. I'm just going to leave them on the lips actually for this, so we'll go for that, and let's zoom back out. Fit to screen. So that's what we have just now. A few more things to do just to finalise the image, but hopefully you're beginning to see how these images can build up. And it's nowhere near done yet, but let's just see how long this is actually going to take, and hopefully you're getting something from it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the grey layer that I mentioned earlier. Now this grey layer is here, and you can see it slightly opaque in this, so let's make it a 100%. And I'm going to talk you through why I use a grey layer. If I used white, I would have to darken a layer and then adjust the colour. If I use black, I'd have to lighten the layer and then adjust the colour. So with a grey layer, it gets me to the end result quicker, so that's why I use that. So I'm going to leave my exposure, everything there fine. I'm going to push my colour temperature, 100%. The tint, 100%. Saturation, let's boost it a wee bit. Vibrance I don't really have to bother with because it's a uniform pixel colour. I'm then going to jump into colour, and what I'm going to do is shift the hues to get to the colour that I want. Right, I'm going to go for that pink there. So let's just increase some of the reds over there, and let's go into the saturation and let's push that slightly so that it's quite vibrant now. Let's go for that. Back into layer properties, and I'm going to drop the opacity down so you can see what it's done there. Now I only want this in certain areas of my image, so what I'm going to do is I'm either going to paint them in or erase them, depending on what the software will allow me to do, because it's been running all day now. So let's go into masking, and I've noticed that it does that. If it runs for a long time, sometimes when you want to paint in, it won't let you, so you have to erase. I personally prefer painting in. It's like colouring in. So let's go here and let's see what it does. It's there. So that's fine. So you can see what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint on this side of the hair. Now this is going to turn this side of the hair that slight pink colour. Like so. Okay. And then if I go into the adjustments and push the opacity, that's what you see. So we don't want it like that. We have to go in and find a nice blend mode. Screen perhaps. Colour burn, lighten. I'm going to go through them all to see what one's going to work best for me. Overlay works best. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the masking and I'm going to tidy some of this up. So that's why I use a grey layer, so that I can get effects like this in Luminar Neo. And if you've seen any of my past videos, you'll notice that with the compositing, I used grey layers there as well. I use them in a lot of my composites. It's a better blend when you are doing certain effects. So I now need to go into erase, and I'm going to get rid of this off the fingers. Just about there. It's quite dark in there, so it doesn't really matter. You won't really see the effect. If I go over too much, I'll take the brush a bit bigger. You do get a slight reflected colour, so that's fine in there, in there. Let's just take it off the very edge of the hairline there. So that's actually worked quite well with that, as you see. I'm just going to leave it in there. I'm not going to go in and fight with that area. And I'm just going to take it out of there. Yep. So you can see that's has coloured the hair there. Now I've got plenty of opportunity to go in and adjust that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it at that just to show you the rest of this image. So we're now here at this point. What do we want to edit? Nothing at the moment. A couple more layers to add into this just to show you the different properties within the layers. So my next layer is going to be the sunflower. And because of the aspect ratio, that drops in just fine. So depending on what blend mode I choose for this, I'll get the effect that I'm after. So let's start at the bottom. Luminosity, a nice effect, but not the one I'm after. Colour, a nice effect, but not enough detail. Hue, changes everything around here. We get a different effect within the image. It may work for certain styles of images. Subtract, we get that. Difference, we get that if you want a psychedelic look with this, all these colours and how it's affecting every layer below it. Let's go hard light, depending on what you're after. Soft light, that looks okay, but it's not the one I want. So let's go into overlay. Again, looks okay, but not the one I want. Screen, different type of effect. So using the blending modes and depending on where you put them, if I was to leave that at screen, for example, and then move the layer, that's what happens. If I move it down further, that's what happens. So depending on where the layer is and the blend mode that you have, if you move this around, you will see different effects with that. So I had that a couple above. Did I take it all the way? Perhaps about there. So look what happens here. So it's not the one I'm after. I know the one I'm after. I'm just doing this to show you different examples. Again, another psychedelic type look. Colour burn, really dark. Multiply, you can see everything there. It works really, really well with multiply and darken. So it works well with both of these. It's just now down to myself what one I'm going to choose. And because I'm here, I'll just leave it at that one. But I need to mask it because I don't want it to be on the wings and I don't want it to be all over here and changing the colour. So what I'll do is I'll use the brush and I'll use the erase tool and I'll zoom in and out and do nice lines within it, or hopefully nice lines within it. But before I do that, I want to show you one thing when you're doing your erasing. If I click there and then hold down Shift and click there, it draws a straight line. If I then click there, it draws a straight line from that point, and then click there and it draws a straight line from that point. So if you want to draw straight lines, click once, hold down Shift, and then click in the next area. I'm thinking that for more linear edits when it comes to stuff like that, whereas this one is more of a, I'm going to say, organic edit. So just to let you see before I speed this part of the video up. So that's what we will be working with at the moment. So that's as we've dropped all that in, and we've got a tiny bit of reflected colour, but it won't matter for this. So I've now went back to the layer with the girl and I want to remove this area here. And we're going to get into masking. I'm going to take the brush, I'm going to take erase, and I'm going to take the brush size down because I quite like the fact that it goes in through the feathers here. So I'm going to remove that area there, and I may have to zoom in just for the tiny wee bit there at the end. Remove that just to make a cleaner image. That looks okay, so I'm going to zoom in and then move down and just take out that area there. And that's a bit better. It looks better for me. Take the size down as well and just go in and do that. And then that. So I'll move across to the other side because there's a tiny bit in there. Take that out and there, and then go in here and in here. That looks better, so let's put that back to fit to screen. So you can see how this is all coming together, and a few more layers to add, but you can see already the power of this and what we're able to do with it. Now I work between Photoshop and Lightroom, and Photoshop is a lot quicker doing this, but the good thing is that if you're not interested in a subscription and you only want to use it for certain things, it has the power to do graphic design as well. A few more layers to add. Plus, let's go in and add this layer here, which you will see is paint spatters. So I'm going to take that up to 100%. I am going to go into screen for this, I think, or perhaps multiply again. Multiply looks better. But it now obliterates the entire image, so we drag it down. I only want it showing in certain areas, and the certain areas that I want it showing in is perhaps around about there. So I'm going to take the opacity of it back slightly. Going to go in and I'm going to bring back the exposure, but watch when you bring back exposure because you'll introduce the greys again. So a good thing to do is add some smart contrast, and it works between the blacks and the whites with this. So that looks okay at that. Nothing too damaging for this at the moment. I'm also going to increase the blacks. So if I do that, this should get slightly darker here. I may drop the opacity of the layer even further, just to around there, just so that we have that slight difference. And then I'm going to get into masking, and I'm going to remove some of this from around here and up there. So this is quite a quick masking exercise. Erase, take the brush quite big, and I'm going to rely on the feathering of the brush to remove these. Make the brush bigger. That's as big as the brush is going to go. So I'm just going to move the brush across like that, and I'm only clicking one at a time. I'm just trying to make it as clean as I possibly can. Make it as clean as I possibly can of a mess. It's probably the best way of putting this. I'm going to take the brush size down and send them out that way slightly, and that way. The reason I'm doing that is simply because of where your eyes will be drawn to, so I'm going to remove them. And there's one in there that's been quite stubborn, so let's take the brush size down, and there, and it's actually not from that layer, so I reckon it's from that layer. It is. So let's go into masking, brush, erase, go in there. It was from that layer there. So this is where we are just now, and we are actually nearly done with this. This is probably quite a long video, but hopefully you're picking up something from this. I'm going to get back in here, and as you can see, I've got quite a few things set up. So we've used the grey layers, we've used them once. For the rest of this, we're not going to be using any more, but you'll see just how the image comes together. What we're going to do, let's just add some lines. It's a graphic design thing. So let's just leave them there, and perhaps move them slightly just to around about there. Because it's graphic design doesn't mean it needs to have lines, but just for the effect I'm going for. And what I'll do is I'll take the opacity right up. This is a PNG, I should have said. This is a PNG I've just added, and I'm doing that with it. Yeah, let's go for that. So this is where we are, and if I move this one back up, you're not going to see much of a difference. So it made no difference to that one at all. From here, a couple more things to add. Let's go in and add, let's just go in and add an arrow. So let's take that arrow there, and we'll put you there. And that's a grey arrow just sitting there. We'll just leave it at that. We won't move anything because we're nearly done. And let's go in and add another set of arrows, which are these ones here. Right, I don't want them that way. And I also want them in a different blend mode. So let's go into screen. Let's go into darken. Darken might be the ones that I'm after, but I don't want them there. I actually want them to run through this. So I'm just going to rotate that to roughly 90 degrees. Put them there. And that way they're running through that arrow there. And let's just stretch them slightly. So you get the idea with this. It's not perfect, but it's actually fun to see what it can do. Let's see what we can do with the black, as I was talking about the grey earlier. So let's see what we actually can do with the black for this. So if I get to develop and I change the temperature, you see it goes blue. And then I can change the tint and it will go to around about there. That's okay. Push the saturation. So let's jump into the colour and let's change the hue of it to see what it does. Let's have the red in there, the blue. That's okay. It's not brilliant, but it is okay. So let's go into the saturation. Let's go into the hue of the blue. And let's push it slightly. It's taking it more towards the purple, bringing it back towards the blue there. Let's leave it at that. One more layer, I think. Or do we just leave it at that? No, let's go for one more layer. And then to see all, and let's add this arrow again. And it's dropped it straight on there. But let's rotate this arrow. Let's make it smaller as well. So let's do that, rotate it roughly 90 degrees, bring it over here, drop it down, let's make it a tiny bit smaller, drop it there for no apparent reason whatsoever, and let's change the colour of it, because this one's grey as well. If I do that, I've got more control of what colours I can change this to. So let's just go up to 100% so that you can see this changing. And let's go into develop and let's change that like so. Let's take it towards green this time. We don't have enough green in this image, so there you go. Let's go into layer properties. And close that down. Nearly done with the image. That's us nearly done. Just a couple of tweaks to make now. So hopefully you've seen what is happening with this and how you can slowly build things up. Now in this video I've used a lot of PNGs because I work with PNGs because of the composites. But we've also used Luminar Neo's masking. So we've got everything in there that you can do these. The PNGs are freely downloadable on the internet and you can create anything with them. I've just had fun with this and threw lots of things at it. Graphic designers will probably be screaming at the screen if they're watching this just now, because we can shut some of these layers off and you'll see what happens as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the portrait and I'm going to go into high key and I'm going to push this slightly, just to around about there. So that's us done with this image. A couple of things that I want to change in it, and I'll show you one of them right now. And it's basically to deal with this area here. So we're going to use something probably within something that's already downloaded for me in here. Let's go for that. Because it's light, and we are going to turn the opacity up so that we can see what we're dealing with. We're going to extend that down. Extend that up slightly. We're going to go for a screen blending mode, same as the last video. And let's move it down to around about there. So we have that in there, but it's covering the model. So we need to move that behind the model. So let's just take it down to behind the model, just to about there. That helps with that. Let's get into develop, push the exposure of it slightly, just slightly, not too much, just so that we've got a slight glow in there. Again, this going to the edges for me is too much, so I'm going to go back into the layer, masking, brush, erase, and I'm just going to click a couple of times around here, probably once about there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call that image finished once I use the brush once more, just there. Now I'm going to paint that bit back in. There we go. So now I'm going to call the image finished. The good thing about doing these types of images is the fact that the layers are there. If there's anything you don't like, well, I just threw arrows and everything in here. I can hide them. I could leave that one. Let's just go in and hide random layers. Hide layer. The lines, I just threw them in. Hide layer. So there you go. There's a finished image as it is. Let's take out that one. Hide layer. There's another finished image. So play around with it. Play around with different techniques. Think outside the box when it comes to editing with them. Hopefully you get something from that, and I do realise it was a long video, and that's why there was a couple of ad breaks through it as well. I hope you saw the power of the grey layer, and that's just a couple of ways to use the grey layer in this. There is other ways, and I'll show you more of them in future videos. Thanks again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.